O.J. Simpson is the ultimate case study in how an athlete can go from American hero to public enemy. On the field, he was unstoppable. A Heisman winner, NFL superstar, Hollywood actor, and one of the most beloved figures of his era. But off the field, his legacy collapsed into one of the darkest chapters in sports history. In 1994, O.J.'s name was forever linked to the brutal murders of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ron Goldman. The world didn't just hear about the case, they lived it. Millions watched live as O.J. fled police in the infamous white Bronco chase, turning highways into a stage for reality TV before reality TV even existed. The trial that followed was labeled the trial of the century. O.J.'s legal team played the media as much as the courtroom, turning evidence into entertainment. The glove moment, the celebrity witnesses, the constant coverage. In the end, O.J. walked free in criminal court, but later a civil jury found him liable for the deaths and ordered him to pay millions. As if that wasn't enough, O.J. found himself back in headlines years later, this time for armed robbery and kidnapping. He spent 9 years in prison, cementing his reputation as a man whose life spiraled far beyond football. His defenders say he's a tragic figure, a man once idolized, caught in a legal circus that blurred the truth. But his critics don't mince words. They see him as one of the most evil athletes ever to step on a field, a murderer who got away with it. Aaron Hernandez went from NFL golden boy to convicted murderer, faster than anyone could have imagined. Drafted by the New England Patriots, he was set for superstardom. He had Tom Brady throwing him passes, Bill Belichick calling plays, and a contract worth millions. To the outside world, Hernandez had everything. Behind the scenes, though, he lived a double life. Hernandez kept gang ties, surrounded himself with shady friends, and carried paranoia like it was part of his daily uniform. In 2013, that world caught up to him. Police charged him with the murder of Odin Lloyd, a semi-pro football player who was dating Hernandez's fiance's sister. The crime was brutal, senseless, and shocking. Investigators later linked him to other violent incidents, painting a picture of a man spiraling out of control. His trial exposed just how reckless his lifestyle had become, with guns, drugs, and witnesses tying him to multiple shootings. Convicted of murder, Hernandez was sentenced to life without parole. But the story didn't end there. In 2017, he was found dead in his prison cell, ruled a suicide. An autopsy revealed Hernandez had advanced CTE, a degenerative brain disease linked to repeated head trauma. It sparked questions. Did football contribute to his violence? Or was he simply evil, with or without the game? Supporters argue Hernandez was a victim of his environment and brain damage. Critics say that explanation doesn't erase his crimes. For many, he'll always be remembered as the NFL star who threw it all away to live like a gangster. Oscar Pistorius was once called the Blade Runner, a double amputee who defied odds to compete at the Olympics. He was more than an athlete. He was a global symbol of perseverance. Children looked up to him. Advertisers cashed in on his image. He was the definition of inspirational. But in 2013, Pistorius destroyed that image overnight. On Valentine's Day, he shot and killed his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp, firing through a locked bathroom door. Pistorius claimed he thought she was an intruder. Prosecutors said it was murder. The trial became international news. Riva was a rising star in her own right, and the details of her death horrified the world. Pistorius' story shifted from miracle athlete to accused killer. Years of appeals followed, with Pistorius eventually convicted of murder and sentenced to more than a decade behind bars. To this day, people debate his motives. Some insist it was a tragic mistake born out of paranoia. Others believe it was cold-blooded murder. Regardless, Pistorius went from inspiration to infamy. His name now sits in the history books, not for Olympic glory, but for one of the most shocking crimes in sports. Michael Vick redefined what an NFL quarterback could be. With unmatched speed and agility, he was a highlight machine for the Atlanta Falcons. Kids wore his jersey, fans packed stadiums just to see him scramble, and endorsements poured in. Then came the dogfighting scandal. In 2007, investigators uncovered that Vick was bankrolling and participating in a brutal dogfighting ring called Bad News Kennels. The details were horrifying. Dogs electrocuted, drowned, and beaten if they lost fights. The public outrage was instant and massive. Vic was sentenced to 23 months in federal prison. He lost his fortune, his reputation, and his career, at least temporarily. When he returned to the NFL, he did manage a comeback with the Philadelphia Eagles and even rebuilt some public respect. He's since worked with animal rights groups to advocate against dogfighting. But for millions, those details never fade. His defenders say he paid his debt to society and used his second chance to change. His critics say you can't undo that kind of cruelty. For them, Michael Vick will always be one of the most hated athletes in sports history. Ray Rice. Ray Rice wasn't the biggest NFL star, but he became one of the most infamous. In 2014, a shocking video surfaced. Rice, then a Baltimore Ravens running back, punched his fiancée Janae Palmer unconscious in an elevator. The footage was brutal and impossible to spin, but even more disturbing was the NFL's initial response. The league suspended Rice for just 2 games, sparking national outrage. Critics blasted the NFL for caring more about image than addressing domestic violence. When the full video leaked publicly, the backlash exploded. Rice's contract was terminated, and he never played another down in the NFL. Some argue Rice became the scapegoat for a league-wide problem that dozens of other players with similar histories kept playing. Others say the video made it impossible to forgive. To many fans, Rice will forever symbolize the NFL's failure to deal with abuse until it became impossible to ignore. Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson was once the fastest man alive. At the 1988 Seoul Olympics, the Canadian sprinter shattered records in the 100-meter dash, leaving rivals in the dust. His victory was supposed to be a crowning moment for track and field. Then came the scandal. Just days later, Johnson tested positive for anabolic steroids. His gold medal was stripped, his world record erased, and his reputation demolished. Johnson's downfall was a bombshell that exposed the widespread problem of doping in athletics. It wasn't just one man cheating. It was a system of coaches, doctors, and enablers. Johnson admitted later he had been using performance-enhancing drugs for years. Supporters argue he was just the most famous name caught in a dirty era where everybody was doing it. Critics say he robbed clean athletes of their dreams and tarnished the Olympics. Today, Johnson's name is shorthand for betrayal in sports. Hope Solo. Not all scandals come from male athletes. Hope Solo, one of the greatest goalkeepers in women's soccer, built a reputation as both a champion and a troublemaker. Her resume is undeniable: Olympic gold medals, a World Cup title, and dominance in the net. But her off-field controversies piled up. In 2014, Solo was arrested and charged with domestic violence after allegedly assaulting her half-sister and nephew during a family dispute. The case was messy and complicated, but it tarnished her image. Solo also feuded with teammates, criticized coaches publicly, and clashed with U.S. soccer officials. After a loss to Sweden in the 2016 Olympics, she called the team a bunch of cowards, leading to her suspension. Defenders say Solo was a passionate competitor who refused to play politics. Critics call her volatile, reckless, and toxic to the sport's image. Either way, she proved that evil in sports isn't just about men, it's about power and behavior, no matter the gender. The Russian doping program. Sometimes the villain isn't one athlete, it's an entire system. The Russian state-sponsored doping scandal of the 2010s pulled back the curtain on corruption at the highest levels of sports. Whistleblowers revealed a massive conspiracy: fake urine samples, tampered lab results, and a government-backed program to ensure Russian dominance at the Olympics. Medals were stripped, dozens of athletes banned, and Russia faced international sanctions. This wasn't a lone cheater cutting corners. It was a machine designed to deceive the world. For many, it was the ultimate betrayal of the Olympic spirit. Defenders of Russian athletes argue many competitors had no choice. They were pawns in a state-run scheme. Critics say winning through lies on that scale is one of the darkest chapters in modern sports. Diego Maradona. Diego Maradona is worshipped as a soccer god, especially in Argentina and Naples. But his legend is as much about chaos as it is about greatness. On the field, he scored the goal of the century and carried Argentina to World Cup glory in 1986. Off the field, he lived in self-destruction. During his prime with Napoli, Maradona was adored like a saint. He led the club to historic titles, but also developed ties with the Camorra, Naples' infamous crime syndicate. His cocaine addiction spiraled out of control, leading to failed drug tests and suspensions. Instead of the disciplined athlete fans wanted him to be, he embodied excess, partying, womanizing, and barely showing up for training. The infamous Hand of God goal, where he punched the ball into the net against England, became the perfect symbol of his career. Brilliant, but tainted. Fans adored his genius, but critics saw a cheater who relished breaking the rules. By the time he retired, Maradona had battled health issues, drugs, scandals, and endless controversy. His defenders call him flawed but human, a genius who burned too brightly. His critics say his demons overshadowed his legacy. For many, he will always be remembered as both the saint and the sinner of soccer. Mike Tyson. Few athletes embodied raw power like Mike Tyson. In the late 1980s, he was the baddest man on the planet, the youngest heavyweight champion in history, feared for his devastating knockouts. But Tyson's personal life was darker than any opponent he ever faced. In 1992, Tyson was convicted of raping 18-year-old Desiree Washington, a beauty pageant contestant. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison, serving 3. The conviction cemented his image as one of the most feared and hated figures in sports. Tyson's career was also littered with bizarre and violent moments. His infamous fight against Evander Holyfield in 1997 ended with Tyson biting off a piece of Holyfield's ear. Outside the ring, Tyson battled substance abuse, bankruptcy, and arrests. Supporters argue Tyson was a troubled kid from the streets, exploited by handlers, and shaped by a violent upbringing. His critics say he's the perfect example of wasted talent, a man whose personal demons made him as infamous as he was famous. Tyson's story is proof that even the most powerful athletes can be undone by their own brutality. Gilbert Arenas. Gilbert Arenas was once one of the NBA's brightest stars. A scoring machine nicknamed Agent Zero, he had a loyal fan base and a flair for the dramatic. But his career will always be remembered for one of the most bizarre scandals in basketball history. In 2009, Arenas was involved in a locker room confrontation with teammate Javaris Crittenton. The dispute, gambling debts, the solution, Arenas brought multiple guns into the Wizards' locker room and allegedly laid them out in front of Crittenton, daring him to pick one. The incident exploded into headlines, and the NBA had no choice but to suspend him for the rest of the season. The fallout ended Arenas' career as a star. Once a fan favorite, he became a punchline. Crittenton himself later spiraled even further, eventually being convicted of murder. Defenders of Arenas say it was a dumb prank taken too far, not an act of real violence. Critics argue it was reckless, dangerous, and proof that some athletes think they're untouchable. What's undeniable is that Arenas went from all-star to cautionary tale almost overnight. Lance Armstrong. For years, Lance Armstrong was untouchable. A cancer survivor who won the Tour de France 7 straight times, he built an empire on the image of resilience. His Livestrong Foundation raised millions, and he was hailed as a hero not just in cycling, but in all of sports. But behind the inspirational story was one of the most elaborate doping schemes in history. Armstrong and his U.S. Postal Service team were accused of systematic blood doping and performance-enhancing drug use. Armstrong denied it for years, attacking critics and even suing journalists who questioned him. The truth finally unraveled in 2012, when Armstrong was stripped of all 7 Tour de France titles and banned from cycling for life. In a 2013 interview with Oprah Winfrey, he admitted to using banned substances throughout his career. Supporters argue Armstrong's case is complicated. He raised cancer awareness and competed in an era where everyone was doping. Critics counter that he was more than a cheater. He bullied, lied, and destroyed lives to protect his image. His fall wasn't just personal, it was the collapse of a myth millions believed in. Tonya Harding. Tonya Harding's name will forever be linked to one of the wildest scandals in sports. In 1994, her rival Nancy Kerrigan was attacked after practice. struck on the knee by a man with a baton. The plot was traced back to Harding's ex-husband and her bodyguard, who hired the assailant. While Harding denied planning the attack, investigators argued she knew more than she admitted. Public opinion turned sharply against her. She was banned from figure skating for life, while Kerrigan recovered in time to win an Olympic silver medal. The incident turned skating into tabloid fodder. Harding went from Olympic hopeful to cultural villain, portrayed as the scheming underdog who tried to literally kneecap her competition. Defenders say Harding was trapped in an abusive marriage and unfairly vilified. Critics say she was complicit, if not in the attack itself, then in creating the toxic environment that allowed it to happen. Either way, Harding's name is now synonymous with sabotage and scandal. Sports have given us legends, but they've also revealed some of the darkest sides of humanity. These stories are reminders that not every athlete is a hero. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next deep dive into the biggest scandals and controversies in sports. And let me know in the comments, which of these athletes shocked you the most, and who else deserves to be on this list?